is Histories and Mysteries. I'm one of your hosts, Ashley, and this is
Jessica. And on today's episode, Ashley is going to be talking about the Slender Man stabbing, which I'm stoked about. I thought that was I've heard a little bit of rumblings with that story, and it sounds pretty interesting. So, looking forward to that. And I'm going to be talking about the legend of King Arthur and also about Robin Hood.
Yay! So I just finished watching Merlin. I know I'm like way late to the party, but I just finished watching it. So it was really interesting. Their different takes on things. And so it'll be kind of interesting to hear the true legend. Because, there's like the Disney King Arthur, which was like my dad's favorite movie, like favorite Disney movie.
Yeah.
And then this Merlin take on it. And so it'll be interesting to see, like, hear the real legend.
Yeah. There's a couple versions, so.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so like Jessica said, I decided to do the Slender Man stabbing, which I don't know if you guys can hear that thudding, but I have my kitten in here and she's like losing her mind.
I was wondering what that was.
She's playing with her own tail and slamming against the door.
Because we're both stuck in our closets recording this.
Yes, because it's the best acoustics we have.
Exactly.
Okay, so I had heard the Slender case. I've heard it on a couple podcasts. I think Let's Go to Court did Slender Man stabbing. And I'm pretty sure And That's Why We Drink did it as well.
They
So
did, yeah.
So I've heard of it a couple times, but like I don't know if I just blocked this out or what, or if they didn't cover like this part of it. I'm not really sure. I don't remember, but it's pretty intense. Like these girls, whew.
Yeah, they're pretty crazy for their age.
It's insane to me because and you'll see when we get into it, but like in certain parts of it, it's like, yeah, these are 12-year-old girls, their mind works like a 12-year-old. And then in certain parts of it, you're like, this is a psychopath, like, or a sociopath, I should say. So,
get it together.
Get it together. All right, so I am going to go ahead and get into it and woohoo, hold your pants for a wild ride.
They're all the way up they're all the way up right now.
Good. That's good.
I'm holding everything in.
All right. So in 2014, three best friends, Morgan Geyser, Anissa, I think that's how you say it. Anissa, it's Anissa. I think it's Anissa Weir and Peyton Lautner were having a typical 12-year-old slumber party. I remember having those, probably eating too much junk food, talking about the latest gossip and watching, movies all night long.
And staying up way too late.
Way too late. I remember this girl in my high school, or not high school. I knew her from elementary into high school. She was a friend of mine. Her name was Erica. She had the best slumber parties. Like, everybody wanted to be invited to them. They were so much fun. Her birthday was always in the winter, and she had this big pond like in her backyard, and then she had a hot tub. So we would all like play truth or dare, and we dare each other to run all the way to the pond, like in the snow, in our bathing suits.
Yeah.
I think someone got dared once to put their foot in the toilet and flush, just like stupid things like that.
Oh yeah, there was always really stupid truth or dare type of things that we would make our friends do.
Yeah,
I'm not even going to describe some of the things.
Yeah, like middle school slumber parties, high school slumber parties were the best.
Yes, they were.
So Morgan and Peyton met in 4th grade, and Peyton saw Morgan sitting alone and went over to talk to her, and the rest is kind of history. They became best friends. They always hung out. They quickly formed a bond and became inseparable. And so it was like this for 4th grade to 6th grade when Anissa entered the picture. And Anissa and Morgan clicked right away. So they kind of became a little threesome friendship But Anissa and Morgan were much closer than Peyton was with Anissa.
That's sad.
Yeah, yeah, they had more in common, and it's funny too because you saw pictures of them hanging out, and Anissa and Morgan would be, like, kind of darker clothes, and they both had glasses, and they would kinda just smirk, and then there was, like, Peyton in this, like, bright yellow sundress with a big smile on
Aw.
her face. Yeah. So you could tell there was definitely a difference, and, um, she the 2 girls, Anissa and Morgan, were the ones who started to become obsessed with the Slender Man legend, and they truly believed it to be real. And Peyton said she didn't really like the Slender Man, it scared her, but, Morgan was her best friend, so she kinda went along with it, and eventually, the girls kinda started getting mean to Peyton, and so she wanted to not really hang out with them much anymore, but she said she felt guilty because, you know, Morgan had Anissa, but that was really it, so if she stopped being friends with her, Morgan really didn't have too many people, and Peyton just seemed like she was a really sweet kid.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to talk a little bit about Slender Man. Do you know much about Slender Man, Jessica?
Just that he's this long, creepy dude.
Yeah, he's super creepy.
I refuse to watch the movie, A, because it looks dumb, and B, because I'm a pansy.
I haven't watched the movie either. I don't know, it just didn't come across my radar, I guess, but apparently he was created on the forum Creepypasta,
Yeah,
and
that
he was
makes
created
sense.
by Eric, I'm gonna say Knudsen. It's Knudsen. I'm gonna
Yeah,
say that's Knudsen.
yeah.
In 2009. And so most of the stories involving Slender Man involve children in some way, either like luring children or, becoming like friends in quotations with children. But there's some kind of child aspect to this.
Was this Knudsen fellow ever found and like made sure he was okay
Yeah, I mean he entered it as a
mentally?
yeah, no, he just entered it as it was a contest for like scary stories.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so his was like, I mean, his was really innocent, and he didn't expect it to take off the way it did.
No, and I just like just because it was like so disturbing, right? Like you'd think that I didn't know it's a contest or anything, so it's like, oh, he must be really something to come up with that.
Well, I mean, look at all the things that Stephen King came up with.
And Edgar Allan Poe, and I know
Yeah.
when I was younger, all of my best writing was like really dark. Like
I
really
believe
dark
that.
poems and like ballads and stuff and
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. You and I are both definitely attracted to the creepy things.
yeah. I tried
Um,
writing nice things and they just weren't as good.
right? I
So,
like to kind of write in my spare time, and um I have this one story I'm working on, and I definitely there's a really graphic creepy scene in it, so I
ew.
get that. So Slender Man. He is abnormally tall. They say like anywhere from 6 feet to like 14 feet tall.
Disgusting. Okay.
Yeah. He has skeletal like limbs which hang like inhumanly long on his body.
Yeah.
He has no face, only like a round white head with no features, no hair, no nothing. And he's always seen wearing a suit. So at least he's a classy man.
Yeah, he's dapper.
Classy. And again, he said to lure children into the woods to eat them or visits them. Sometimes adults. He'll visit adults too to convince them to kill other people. So, as previously said, this story was concocted by Eric on the creepy pasta thread in the Something Awful forums. And like I said, he was just entering it for a contest. And for some reason, this story really took off with people, and like other authors, like story creators kind of started using this Slender Man and creating their own stories, creating their own versions, their own pictures of him. It eventually jumped to other forums. One in particular was a horror web series called Marble Hornets, and this series became extremely popular. So this just kind of spread the legend even more. And then just 2 years after the original story had been released, the Minneapolis Star Tribune reported a story on the Slender Man, stating that the origins were difficult to pinpoint. So hence the birth of this legend.
Yeah.
And they did do a interview with Eric, and he said he was shocked. Like, he had no idea that this was going to get the attention it did. And I mean, everybody's heard of Slenderman now. There's the movies out about him. And even my husband, I asked him, I was like, hey, do you know what Slenderman is? And he does. And he's not into this kind of stuff at all.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I was like, well, I hope Eric gets some of the money from these movies for being like the creator of
Yeah.
this. But so this is the creature that Anissa and Morgan started to obsess about. So they decided the night of the slumber party celebrating Morgan's birthday that we had previously talked about, that this was going to be the night they were going to kill Peyton. So
Like, I don't, okay.
yeah, so we'll get into a little bit more of their reasoning and their mental state behind this, but basically they said that the Slender Man told them to kill Peyton so that they could show that they were worthy of him and that he wouldn't hurt their families.
Okay.
So so Morgan decided at the slumber party that she didn't want to stay up all night. She wanted to go to bed, which Peyton said was kind of odd, because Morgan, every other slumber party, had wanted to stay up all night. But I mean, that wouldn't, you'd just be like, oh, okay. I mean, it's not like you're going to be like, oh, something's wrong, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, could have been not feeling well or whatever, so.
Yeah, you just, that wouldn't be any. And, you know, some of this, there's going to be a point in here where, you know, something happened and Peyton stayed around, and my first initial thought was, what was she thinking? But then I just had to remind myself that she's 12, you know? So, um, so they go to bed early, and the next morning the girls decide to go to the park. And this is where the innocent party took a dark turn. The three girls head into the park bathroom, and Anissa began the attack, and she tried to knock Peyton out, but it didn't work, and it just ended up making Peyton really angry. She's like, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah.
But she didn't leave.
What?
And this was the point where I was like, I don't understand why she didn't leave. But again, I have to remember she's 12. Like, you know, I don't understand that mindset, but I am a 33-year-old woman. Like, at 12, who knows what's going on in your mind, you know? These are your best friends.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, they're your best friends. You don't think that they're gonna turn around and murder you.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I'm sure they explained it away. You know, like, oh, it's an accident or something.
Like,
I'm
sorry,
sure they
I
did something.
fell, or, I thought there was a bug or something, or.
Exactly. So Peyton stayed with the girls, and the three girls decided to head into the woods. They originally said, like, let's go bird watching. And then while they were in the woods, they decided to play hide and seek. And one source said it was suggested that Peyton lay down and cover herself with twigs and leaves for like a good hiding spot. And when she did that, Morgan jumped on top of Peyton and started to stab her, and she stabbed her 19 times with a kitchen knife.
What?
Yeah, and Anissa watched. The two girls then fled the scene in search of Slender Man.
Like, okay, wasn't Morgan her first friend? And she didn't want to do this in the
Yes.
first place? Or, like,
Well,
I don't know. I always thought that it was like Anissa's idea. I don't know why.
I kind of did too until I read this.
Okay.
And it's weird because so Morgan and Peyton were best friends first.
Yeah.
And Anissa was the one that had introduced Morgan to Slenderman.
Okay.
Slenderman. But then it seems like Morgan kind of made this her own thing.
Okay.
So, yeah, because Morgan was the one that did the stabbing. And again, she stabbed her 19 times. She was stabbed in her chest, abdomen, and arms, and then she was left dead. And This is really sad. They said that with one of the interviews I was reading that Peyton tried to get up and was like, I can't see, I can't feel anything. And Morgan told her to lay down because she'll bleed out slower.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this little 12-year-old girl. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Like, so Anissa did nothing. She didn't stab her. She just watched.
That's what they said. Yep. She just watched.
Okay. Continue.
So this little 12-year-old girl was such a fighter. She said after they left, she pulled herself up. She said she thinks she used a couple of like the trees to like help balance herself. And she walked out into this kind of clearing where she fell down and laid down. And she was basically laying there bleeding out. But thankfully, a biker rode by. He was biking in like the wooded areas and stuff like that. And his name is Greg Steinberg. And he rolled by. Peyton is still conscious at this time. And apparently she said to him, "Can you help me, please? I've been stabbed multiple times."
Wow.
Yeah. So even with all that, she was still using her pleases and thank yous. And Greg called 911 and offered her some water. And the article said you can hear him like comforting her on the 911 call. He said like, "Honey, it's going to be okay. The ambulance is on its way." It's really sweet.
Yeah.
And once the ambulance got there, Peyton was rushed to the hospital where they performed emergency surgery on her. The doctor said the stab wound had penetrated her diaphragm, damaging her liver and her stomach. And another one had missed a major artery in her heart by less than a millimeter. They said any more than a hair's length closer, she would have been dead.
Okay, so she survived.
Yeah, she survives.
Oh my gosh, okay.
Sorry. Yeah, she survives.
She totally died.
No, she survives.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, poor baby.
This next sentence, it would have said that anyway. She said that the recovery was difficult.
Okay, that's just typical me jumping ahead.
No, you're fine.
Panicking over here.
But she did say that recovery was difficult both emotionally and physically. She was so scared at night. She had to sleep with her mom for a really long time. Her mom said she had a really hard time trusting, obviously. Like, she would keep friends at an arm's length. Yeah. Even, like, with family, it was really hard for her to trust people again.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And I can't imagine being 12 and, like, basically having to relearn to trust.
Yeah. And starting over and, like...
Yeah.
You know, that'd be hard. And it's not even, like, a normal child thing to go through where you have to, like, learn to trust somebody again, because, like, someone can break your trust and you're like, well, they hurt me so bad, but this time it's like my best friends stabbed me and tried to kill me.
Yeah. So the two girls that fled into the woods were obtained shortly after, and immediately confessed to the whole thing. Apparently, they had been planning to kill Peyton for 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, to appease Slender Man. The officers who found the girls, he found them sitting on the side of a freeway, said that they were generally really calm. And he said even a little meek.
That's creepy.
Yeah. So the interviewing officer also described Morgan as extremely calm. A quote from that officer said, "I mean, she's at the police department and she's covered in blood, and this is like a normal day for her." Ugh. And they also said that this was like the most unprepared they had been for an interview, because going in, they thought that this was probably going to be like over a boy or something, you know, and it was not. So, so I'm going to get into the interview that the police had with the girls, and it's pretty shocking. So I just want to warn people about that. But, and I have a lot of quotes too. So Morgan said, "I might as well just say it. We were trying to kill her. This is going to get me arrested, isn't it?" So it's like she didn't even understand the like enormity of the situation.
That's crazy. Well, she kind of understood because she knew she was going to be arrested.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and Morgan said that Anissa told her what she had to do to appease the Slender Man, otherwise he would hurt their families. She said she didn't know him, but Anissa did. And Anissa said she truly believed he was real because she thought that she saw him one day while riding the bus. She saw him like standing by a tree.
Ew.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is just like there's a man standing there and she's like, oh, that's Slender Man, or if it was just like a manifestation of her imagination. So they thought the thought was that they were trying to show Slender Man that they were worthy by killing something. I'm not really sure like worthy of what, but Anissa said that it was Morgan who told her that they had to kill Peyton. And it was Morgan who knew that Slender Man had a big mansion in the middle of this national park, which is where they were trying to go after they had stabbed Peyton. So during these interviews, basically Morgan was blaming Anissa and Anissa was blaming Morgan.
Okay.
So there was like no friendship there anymore. They were just blaming each other.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, the true story was that they had been planning her murder together for 6 months. They would talk about it in code using cracker for the word knife and itch for the word kill.
Oh.
So they could talk about it like out in the open without people really knowing.
Yeah.
And they had 3 different plans to murder Peyton. So the first was to duct tape her mouth in the middle of the night at the sleepover and then stab her in the neck, but they were too tired from the roller skating party earlier.
Okay.
The second plan involved killing her in the bathroom at that park where, quote, there was a drain for all of the blood.
Ew.
But both girls said that both girls said that the other one took the knife from the kitchen and carried it with them. So Anissa said that Morgan did it. Morgan said that Anissa did it. One interesting thing the detective said was that in Anissa's interview, she would just tell the story, like, this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. Whereas in Morgan's interview, she would say things like, I think Anissa did this. I think this happened. So she was much more deceptive in her interview than Anissa was.
Okay.
So they're in the bathroom at the park, and Anissa said, from what I read on the computer, it's easier to kill people when they're either asleep or unconscious, and it's also easier if you do not look them in the eye. So Anissa banged Peyton's head into the concrete, trying to render her unconscious. But when that didn't work, they lost their nerve and just decided to move on to plan 3, which was leading her into the woods and stabbing her there.
Poor baby.
And here's a quote from Morgan. This one's a rough one. We led her there and tricked her. We said that we were going bird watching. People who trust you become very gullible, and it was sort of sad.
Aww.
Yeah. So Anissa said she was going to hide in a place and I was going to hide in another. And then Morgan and I were going to be like lionesses chasing her down like a zebra. I was going to tackle her and Morgan was going to do the stabbing.
That's sad.
And then another quote from Morgan that just kind of shows her mental capacity at the time. The detective said, okay, so then what happened? And Morgan said, I already told you, stab, 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 stab.
Oh my goodness.
It was weird. I felt no remorse. I thought I would. I actually felt nothing.
Wow.
Yeah. So after asking where Morgan asked, she said, where's Peyton's body? And learned that she was in the hospital. Anissa said, I know she'll never trust me again and that she hates my guts. Which,
yeah,
there's the kind of like 12-year-old mentality,
Yeah.
So the girls were tried as adults, which did stir up some controversy, but I can't remember who I read this from. I want to say it was Peyton's mom, but I'm not 100% sure. Made a really good point and said, it's an adult crime. Like, they tried to murder someone. They didn't just try and steal like a candy bar, right? It's not like a kid crime. So they should be tried in adult court.
Yeah.
And they were charged with first-degree intentional homicide.
Oh, wow.
During the investigation, police found notebooks filled with thoughts about Slender Man in Morgan's locker.
Okay.
And in her room, they found mutilated dolls that had their arms, legs, and hands cut off.
Ew.
Yeah. Morgan had also sent Anissa an email reminding her to clear her browser history, but they found thousands of searches on Morgan's computer for how to get away with murder and like what kind of insane am I,
Oh, jeez.
etc.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. So clearly Morgan knew that like something was wrong with her,
Yeah.
but both girls entered not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. And Anissa took a last minute plea deal where she pleaded guilty to second degree intentional homicide and also agreed that a jury would hear her insanity defense and decide if she was indeed responsible and should go to jail or if she was not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect and should go to a mental institution.
Yeah.
And the jury found her not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect and was sentenced to 25 years in a state institution.
Wow.
So they do believe, and after reading all this, that Morgan was the kind of mastermind ringleader behind this.
Yeah.
And so she also took a plea deal, but she was sentenced to 40 years in the state institution.
Holy crap.
Yeah. And Morgan's lawyers have since appealed her case, saying that it shouldn't have been in adult court and that the interview with the police shouldn't have been allowed because she didn't know what rights she was signing away by agreeing to speak to the detective alone.
Yeah.
But the court rejected the appeal, saying even if the lower court was wrong, such error was harmless beyond a reasonable doubt due to the additional unchallenged and overwhelming evidence in this case.
Oh.
And so that actually just happened in August.
Oh.
And so her lawyer said that they're going to take it to the Supreme Court in Wisconsin.
Wow.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. But a little bit of information about Morgan that I kind of kept till the end was that Morgan, during the trial, was diagnosed with early onset schizophrenia, which is very rare to have it be that early.
Yeah.
But her dad also had schizophrenia.
Oh.
Yeah, so I can see where that would, make her believe in Slender Man. But I mean, I don't know a lot about schizophrenia, but I do know people who are schizophrenic don't always murder people. So
Oh no.
I also feel kind of like she may have been a sociopath just because she did not feel any remorse or feeling after what she did. She
Yeah.
didn't have those emotions. But one thing I would like to say too is that Peyton is now 17. So this happened 5 years ago. She is now 17 and she is doing really well. She is thriving. She's been accepted to college. She wants to do something in the medical field because of her experience.
Good.
And she did an interview where they asked her, like, if you could talk to Morgan right now, what would you say to her? And she said, I would probably initially thank her. I would say just because of what she did, I have the life I have now. I really, really like it and I have a plan. I didn't have a plan when I was 12, and now I do because of everything I went through. I wouldn't think that someone who went through what I did would ever say that, but that's truly how I feel. Without the whole situation, I wouldn't be who I am.
That's a healthy attitude to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And she also gave some advice for young girls who are perhaps in like a toxic friendship. She said, get out before something bad happens to you, even if you're guilted into it, if you've been friends with them for years. If you feel something is bad, you need to get out while you still can.
Sound advice.
Yes. So that, my friend, is the story of the Slender Man stabbing.
Woohoo! Good job.
Thanks.
Very
So
interesting.
creepy.
It is very creepy.
It's just, I think it's so hard because they were 12.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's not even like they just got mad and like lost their mind. Like they planned this out for 6 months. So basically, Morgan was 11 when she was planning this.
Wow.
I mean, to be 11 and planning a murder of your best friend, that's just insane.
I'm glad that they got some years at least and that they
Yeah.
were tried as adults because like, you usually don't get tried until you're 13. So
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that definitely was an adult crime and needed to be done in
Yes.
adult court. It's not something that, like, they did something stupid and they just need to be rehabilitated,
Yeah.
like, because if you get tried, I don't know about in Canada, but in America, if you get tried in juvenile court, once you're 18, you're out. Like, you did it, you're done.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not really sure how it works here. Like, I mean, all I really deal with at work is basically doing the reports, right? So I never really know
yeah,
if they get jail time or for how long, but I do know that usually if they're 12 and under, like they don't get charged or anything. So
gotcha.
I usually just get issued a warning unless I think like if they're like a repeat offender, but
Yeah.
so
Yeah, it's just a crazy, sad case, and that like, Peyton is only 17, like, she's still such a baby, and to have had to go through that, at such a young age and bounce back from it the way she did.
yeah, and she seems to be taking it really well, so
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm sure that took, years of recovery and
oh, of
therapy.
course, yeah. At least she did recover.
Yes, yes.
So,
Yeah, I can't believe too, I mean, can you imagine getting stabbed 19 times and pulling yourself up and crawling out of the damn forest, and then let alone at the age of 12?
yeah, and then like miraculously someone is biking by.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. My story?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay. Uh hopefully I do it justice. Okay. So, King Arthur. Do you think he was real?
I've always struggled with this, like, I don't think he was real in the aspect of, like, everything that was said, but I kind of feel like maybe he was based on a real king,
Mhm.
but I don't know.
I know it is really hard and I'll kind of like debunk it a little bit as I go through this, but
Yeah.
um I always had the same mindset as you that like it wasn't just one person, it was based off of an amalgamation of a bunch of people. So,
Well, and, like, obviously, I mean, I don't really believe in, like, sorcery and, like, Merlin, but they did back then, so, I mean, I definitely can see where there was, like, a king who had a right-hand man who was, like, a sorcerer, that they're kinda basing that on.
yeah, exactly. So, he was either referred to as King Arthur, Arthur, or Arthur Pendragon, and his father was Uther Pendragon, as Ashley would know from recently watching Merlin.
Merlin!
Yeah.
Arthur was a bit of a hottie in
Ugh,
Merlin, not gonna lie.
Bradley James. He can.
I didn't think so at first, but, like, the more I watched him, I was like,
Yeah,
"Okay,
because
okay, I see it."
his personality developed from being a jerk to being a sweetheart. So,
Yeah. Mhm. Yep.
yeah. According to medieval legend, King Arthur led British forces, which included the Knights of the Round Table, against Saxon invaders in the early 6th century. Though there are many stories about him, historians are unable to determine that he was a real person. Arthur first appears in a Welsh writer's work. In these writings, he spoke of at least 12 battles in which Arthur fought. The odd part about these writings, though, was that all of these battles took place in many different time periods and places, so it wouldn't have been possible to have been fought by the same man.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
okay. Well, and I can see too, like, at that time, everything was really hard, and to want kind of like a hero to write about?
Exactly, and that's the thing, like, unless you're a time traveler, this wouldn't have been possible to be one man.
Well, maybe with Merlin's help, he was a time traveler.
I just keep thinking of Outlander, but that's just me.
Oh, I love that show.
Me too. It's
I
so
started
funny.
watching The Last Kingdom
Okay.
on Netflix, which is like the Danes versus Saxons. It's really it takes like a minute to get into, but then once you do, it's really good. And the main character, mwah, so pretty.
I found that
I did a chef's kiss, by the way, for mwah.
I found that with The Witcher. Did you ever watch it?
Oh, I loved The
Okay,
Witcher.
it was so hard to get into
Oh, really?
because it was so confusing.
Yeah, because they do jump around
Yeah,
time.
and they don't tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense until, like, the last episode or 2, and you're like,
You're
"Okay,
like,
that makes
"Oh." Yeah.
so much more sense now."
Yeah, I remember. I asked my husband the other day, I was like, "'Cause I want season 2 to come
Oh,
out."
yes.
And so I couldn't remember. I was like, "Did The Witcher come out earlier this year, or was it, like, 7 years ago?" Because I don't know with 2020,
Yeah,
like,
I just
but it was this year, so it's probably a good another year before The
yeah.
Witcher
Well,
comes out.
there's, behind the scenes of making it on Netflix right now, so
Ooh.
I wanna take a look at that, but
Love me some Henry Cavill. I first saw him in The Tudors, which I mentioned before on this podcast, but he plays, King Henry's, like, right-hand man,
yeah.
and, oh, he's gorgeous in that too, and, for those of you who haven't seen The Tudors, it's a very sexual show, there's a lot of sex in it, so you see his butt and his chest a lot, and it's real nice.
Maybe I should watch The Tutors.
It's real good.
Well, I'm actually, like, really looking forward to seeing him in Enola Holmes. That's coming out soon. It's with, Millie Bobby Brown, Sam Claflin,
Oh, I
it's
haven't
him
heard
and
of it.
Henry Cavill, Helena Bonham Carter.
Oh, that sounds really
It
good.
looks really good. It's a Netflix show, so
Oh, okay, I'm
I think
excited.
it's a show. It might be a movie. I really have no idea, but it looks really good.
Okay. Yeah, and I really like all those people,
Yeah,
so
you get Henry Cavill with his British accent.
I love it. I do have to say that so in The Tudors, he obviously had, like, regular hair, but I'm kinda liking the white hair in The Witcher.
Yeah, see, I'm probably gonna get a lot of flack for this because, like, I didn't like it as much, but he was still
Ugh.
attractive to look at. I just didn't prefer the white hair.
Oh, I kinda liked it, kinda like Orlando Bloom and Legolas, I really enjoyed the blonde hair too.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting off topic.
Yeah, very much.
I don't even know how we got there. Okay.
We're very talented.
We love our men.
Yes, you do.
Uh, back to King Arthur.
Yes.
Welsh writers then decided to draw on these writings, and Arthur's fame spread across the lands. In a 12th century book titled History of the Kings of Britain, Geoffrey of Monmouth, and if I pronounced that wrong, I'm really sorry, wrote the first life story of King Arthur. In this story, he described the events surrounding Excalibur, which was previously known as Caliburn, his knights
Ooh.
Lancelot, Queen Guinevere, and Merlin. Apparently, Joffrey got this story from a lost Celtic manuscript, which only he was able to view.
Oh,
Oh,
convenient.
very convenient. I'm glad you said that word first because I was trying to think of it. I have not been able to think of words lately, and I feel like
Words are hard.
words are really hard. It's this year. Oh, this year is a thing. It was even fabled that Arthur went on a search for the famed Holy Grail, which just increased his legendary status at that point.
Mm.
The story also goes that when Britain is in great need, Arthur will return to aid them.
Hey, that's what they said in Merlin.
Yeah. Well, good. They got it from Joffrey's writing. Joffrey's writing inspired others to write about Arthur, which led to the creation of the Arthurian romance. The poet Chrétien de Troyes was so inspired that he wrote several love and chivalry poems surrounding the Knights of the Round Table. The most,
Oh,
yeah, isn't that sweet?
yeah.
The most famous of these stories was the illustrious affair surrounding Lancelot and Guinevere.
I hate that. I hate it because, like, Arthur is supposed to be this just, like, really amazing,
Yeah,
like, king and person, and then here the love of his life is cheating on him with his best friend. Like,
right?
I hate it.
Isn't that
I
silly?
hate it. Yeah. That's why I liked how they did it in Merlin, where, like, she was still had, like, an attachment to Lancelot, but it was well before her and Arthur actually got together,
Mhm.
and then, like, when they did get together, it was over,
Yeah.
you
No,
know?
I liked that too. And I liked her. I thought she was very sweet. So,
Oh, she's so
so
sweet.
sweet. The best known story of Arthur's life was printed in 1485 by Sir Thomas Malory, titled Le Mort d'Arthur. I,
Ooh,
I butchered that. It's basically the death of Arthur.
gotcha.
The death of Arthur. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. This includes his quest for the Holy Grail and the affair between Lancelot and Guinevere, which ultimately leads to Guinevere becoming a nun and Lancelot becoming a monk once they are discovered. Right?
I don't like that
I've
either.
never heard that before.
I don't either. I haven't either. I mean, nothing against monks and nuns. More power to them,
Yeah.
But I don't like that they had an affair, so that they had to become a nun and a monk,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I don't like that whole
It's just
story.
really funny. It's believed that Mallory's retelling was written while he was in jail. And he was a wealthy Englishman who was frequently breaking the law.
Okay.
Yeah. So, fun stuff. His book unfortunately fell out of favor and wasn't available again until 1816, at the height of the Romantic
Oh.
era in literary terms,
Oh, okay.
which is a long time, like 400 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mallory's version left a deep impression, and it became the basis for many more retellings. This includes The Idylls of the King by Victorian poet Lord Alfred Tennyson and the T.H. White novel The Once and Future King, which led to
Hmm.
the Disney film The Sword and the Stone.
That was my dad's favorite.
That's fun. So that was based off of Mallory's story, which
Interesting.
is interesting because it fell out of favor for 400 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good on him. The thing is, in most of these various stories, there are facts that remain consistent and some that differ. Did he pull his sword Excalibur out of a stone, or was it given to him by the Lady of the Lake?
Oh, yeah. I've heard both of those.
Yeah. Further, it is said that the man to bring on his demise, Mordred, was either his son or his nephew.
I heard that too. You know what's funny is that show on Netflix, Cursed,
Yeah.
is pre pre Arthur, pre Merlin time, and it has Nimue, who is AKA the Lady of the Lake, and she has Excalibur. Um it's kind of like with all of these kind of legends, Nimue sometimes is the Lady of the Lake, sometimes she's her own sorcerer. So, but yeah, in it
Okay.
she's got
Was
Excalibur.
it good?
Oh, so good. And it's got the main girl from 13 Reasons Why.
Yeah.
But she did such a good job. And yeah, it's a really interesting take because like I said, it's pre Arthur becoming King Arthur. And it's kind of her, so she's a sorcerer, she's Fae, and it's kind of her trying to stand up for the Fae, who the king at the time is killing everyone.
Yeah.
So, or killing all the Fae. It's really, really good.
Oh, okay. Either way, these stories are told on such a large scale that it is hard to believe he was ever real, yet some still believe
Mhm.
it. Despite all of this, the basics of the story are as follows. He ascended to the British throne after Britain had invaded and their king was overthrown. As mentioned above, there are two variations as to how he obtained his sword. One story is that there is a prophecy that only the true king could pull the sword Excalibur from the stone it was embedded in. It is said that a young stranger, Arthur, walked up to the stone and was able to easily pull the sword from the stone, thus making him king, which is usually the most common retelling of that
Mhm.
story in any of the
Yeah.
movies we see. The other
Right.
story is that he was going across a lake and a mysterious creature living in the lake reached up with the sword in her hand and he was given it after his own sword broke. She is commonly referred to as the Lady in the Lake. Whichever story you choose to believe, I personally like the Sword and the Stone story better.
I do too. I don't know. I like it. I think it's more like the one you think of
Yeah.
when you think of King
Well, it just
Arthur.
seems
It's
so,
more like
and
nostalgic.
it's so powerful, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
comes from nothing, and then all of a sudden he's just like, "Hiya!"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Arthur's now the king, and he goes on to build his famed castle, Camelot.
Hmm.
Now that he is king, he needs to recruit people to serve with him in order to defeat the evil forces that are plaguing the countryside. The knights that he recruits become the Knights of the Round Table, some of which include Lancelot, of course, Gawain, Bedivere, and Galahad. I always liked Galahad because I think Hugh Dancy played him. While Arthur and his men travel around defeating the evil foes, he comes across a beautiful woman named Guinevere, who he then marries. Once he and his knights brought peace to the regions, there is a period of happiness in Camelot. However, as the legend goes, and as we have discussed in detail, Lancelot falls in love with Guinevere, and some even say this love affair is what leads to the fall of Arthur and of Camelot, because Arthur goes to war with Lancelot and he also sentences Guinevere to be killed.
Oh, don't like that.
No. I mean, kind of deserved, but. Another tale, as I mentioned earlier, is that a man named Mordred tries to take both Guinevere and the throne for himself, where he and Arthur meet on the battlefield. Mordred is killed and Arthur is severely wounded. In one tale, Arthur requests Sir Bedivere to return Excalibur to the lake from whence it came. Bedivere is very hesitant about this, as he knows how powerful the sword is. However, he reluctantly agrees, throwing the sword back into the lake, where an army merges to grab the sword and bring it back down to the depths. He is then taken to Avalon, the place where Excalibur was forged, where he then dies from his injuries. Other stories state that he was taken to Avalon, where he recovered from his injuries to emerge when Britain needed him again. The Round Table was based on the idea that all who sit at the table are equals because it has no head. There are also two versions of how this table came to be. In one, it was a wedding gift by Guinevere's father, King Leo de Grance, whatever, who got it from Arthur's father, Uther Pendragon. In another story, the table was built by Merlin and meant to resemble the table used at the Last Supper.
Yeah, and I can see again too, like why during those times the round table would have been so significant, just because, during those times nobility were pretty stuck up. They
Yeah.
didn't think that there were equals, and especially kings and stuff like that. They believed they were of God, so they were better than everybody. And so I can see where that legend would have been so popular, that like, hey, here's a king that's saying that, his knight, I mean, wow, they were all nobility, but the king was saying that, someone else was equal to him. I can see
Exactly.
where that would be a pretty popular thing.
Yeah, and it just like you said, like adds to his legendary status, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
To this date, the location of Camelot and Avalon have been wildly argued. However, no definitive answers have come up with anything. It is believed Camelot was at Tintagel Castle, although this castle was built centuries after Arthur was said to have lived. So,
So that can't be it.
yeah. And that Avalon was at a place called Glastonbury Tor. So, if you've heard of Arthur, you have more than likely heard of the magician Merlin.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, if you listen to the first however many minutes of this segment. um, and if you haven't watched the TV show yet, by all means, go watch it because it's very cheesy and it's wonderful and it's on Netflix.
Merlin?
Yes.
It's super cheesy. I love it.
Was it on? It's on Netflix in the US too, right?
Yeah, yeah, and again, it took me a minute to get into,
Well,
but once you
that's
do,
because
it's really
it's
good.
super cheesy.
Yeah, but it's like it becomes endearingly
Yes,
so.
exactly. It's just don't like the graphics aren't great, but it's still very like
Well, I
lovely.
mean, it was made back in 2008,
Yeah,
so it's been like 12 years.
yeah. Just don't get your hopes up for like high quality, but it is very wonderful.
Yeah, but it's cute. Yeah.
Yeah. Merlin is more than likely based on two different figures in Welsh history. A madman, which I originally read it as Madame. I was so
A
confused.
madame.
Named, gosh, these names. Myrddin Wilt. It's like
Okay.
Myrdin. Myrddin.
Murden? Yeah, that looks about right.
And a prophet named Emmers Veldig.
Oh,
Emery Veldig?
Emery's, that's what they called him on Merlin, Emery's.
Okay, yes, and it's Emery's Veldig.
Okay.
Yes. Both of whom may have lain. Goodness gracious. both, both of whom may have lived in the 6th century. Our dear writer Geoffrey of Monmouth more than likely combined both of these individuals to create the beloved Merlin we know and love today. Two of Arthur's knights may have also been based off of real people. Sir Bedivere appears to be known as Bedvere Bedrident. Goodness gracious, these names. In early Welsh stories, and is a member of the royal house of Findue, which rose to power in the early 6th century. Another knight was Sir Kay, who appeared in the same writings as Sir Bedivere. He appeared to have been Kai Her, a Welsh lord.
Hmm.
For Arthur, it is said he came from Roman origins. There are 2 Roman leaders he could have been: Lucius Artorius Castus or Aurelius Ambrosius. These names are killing me.
I want to say it's pronounced Aurelius, but I could be wrong.
You could be right. And he was a leader that supposedly led the British to victory against the Saxons twice in the 6th or 7th centuries.
Hmm.
Others have suggested he was a Welsh king or a king located in modern-day Scotland and Ireland.
Okay.
Finally, some historians suggest the name Arthur wasn't a name at all, but a title, as the Arth character in Latin can also mean bear. With this
Huh.
yeah, super interesting.
Yeah.
With this implication, Arthur could have been just about anyone. The current school of thought is that Arthur was based on a mix of either mythological or historical figures, or that he was solely a product of imagination. Regardless of whether Arthur actually existed or not, the legends will continue to inspire writers.
For sure. It's such a good one.
Exactly. It's so good. Except,
It is. It is so inspiring, and there's so many different characters and different things going on. It's, one that will be retold for
I
centuries.
just, I might get slack for this, but I hated the newest retelling of it. Hated it.
What was that one?
Um, it had Jude Law in it. Um, Charlie something or another from Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, I don't know if I saw that. I have a really bad memory, so I may have seen it, I may not have, but either way, I don't remember it.
It was weird. I didn't enjoy it, which was
Okay.
upsetting because there's so many good actors in it. But
Yeah.
and I mean, I'm going to talk about Robin Hood soon too, and I did not enjoy that remaking either. I thought it was awful.
The one with Russell Crowe.
No, no, that one was great. I loved that one. No, there was one with Taron Egerton and like Jamie Foxx. Um, it
I
was
don't think I saw that one either.
terrible. We couldn't even watch the first 5 minutes of it. We had to turn it off. Ugh, which is so disappointing because I really wanted to enjoy both of those movies, but they were not great.
Oh no.
Oh well, I digress.
That is disappointing.
So I have some fun facts about Arthur.
Okay.
So King Arthur was one of the 9 worthies, which was which was essentially a top 9 list of the most chivalrous men during the Middle Ages.
Okay. I like how they had to pick a fictional guy there.
I know, it's so funny. Among this list were Hector, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Joshua, David, Judas Maccabeus, Charlemagne, and Godfrey of Bouillon. King Arthur.
Okay.
So funny that they had a top 9 list.
Yeah.
King Arthur had a special bond with Merlin the magician. Merlin was Arthur's teacher, mentor, and friend. He was previously depicted as a half-mortal and a symbol of Celtic Druidic faith. Some historical facts indicate that he was never a king, but simply a military leader. Apart from Excalibur, he had other famous weapons. Some stories mention a dagger or a spear. 2 other swords were also mentioned, one being Clarent, a sword of peace used for knighting, and a sword called Sear, which was a sword wielded by Arthur and used to knight Lancelot. Cadbury Castle was believed to have been part of Camelot, which was formerly known as Camelot, and it's situated in the English county of Somerset. I don't know. I should really look this stuff up before I blurt it out.
I'm pretty sure it's Somerset, but I could be wrong again.
Okay. We'll go with that. It's unknown if King Arthur had any children. As above, Mordred could have been either his son or his nephew. So, and that's my King Arthur story. I do have.
I like to think of my King Arthur as a king with Excalibur whose wife never cheated on him, and his best friend is Merlin.
I also like that story. But I am done with my King Arthur story, but I do have my sources that I used.
Oh, I forgot to do mine.
We'll do it at the end, and then you can put it at the
Okay,
beginning.
remind me.
I used history.com, of course. I used howstuffworks.com,
Mhm,
biography, something or another. The author is Barbara Matanzny. And for the How Stuff
mhm.
Works article, it was Shanna Freeman. And I
Okay.
also used facts.net for that.
Ooh,
So I did all that.
cool.
And then I'm just going to like speed on through my Robin Hood stuff because it's not as much. And
Okay.
so Robin Hood, he was an outlaw living in Sherwood Forest with his band of merry men. He was not a real person, he was an invention. Robert,
Robert.
Robin or Robert of Locksley. Oh, I did this so wrong. Oh, I didn't put a comma, that's why. Or he was known as Hood, aka Hod or Hood. It's like
I like the name Robert Hood.
it's like Hude. Hood. Which was a nickname that was given to petty criminals at the time of the middle 13th century.
Oh, okay.
There were men that were like Robin Hood who were admired by the oppressed peasantry, which is probably how he came to be.
Yeah.
Robin, oh gosh, why do I keep calling him Robin?
Robin.
Robin did not live during the reign of Richard the Lionheart. He is often portrayed as the enemy of Prince John and the imprisoned Richard I. But these three men were not brought together until the 16th century writings.
Hmm.
He was not just. I need a spell check. He was. I'm my own worst enemy doing my notes at 2 a.m. He was not a dispossessed nobleman. All of the early ballads indicated he was a yeoman, basically a farmer or a peasant. He was
Oh.
indicated in the 1530s that he was a noble outlaw, most likely referring to his intelligence and attitude.
Hmm.
Robert, oh, Robert. I'm getting
Robert Hood.
getting angry with myself. My notes very clearly say Robin. Robin married Maid Marian, but interestingly enough, she was involved in her own ballads and stories separately.
Oh.
It is believed she replaced Robin's devotion to the Virgin Mary, which was thought to be inappropriate after the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah. The first literary references to Robin Hood appear in a series of 14th and 15th century ballads about a violent yeoman who lived in Sherwood Forest with his men and frequently clashed with the Sheriff of Nottingham. Rather than a peasant, knight, or fallen noble, as in later versions, the protagonist of these medieval stories is a commoner. Little John and Will Scarlet are part of this.
You okay?
Don't know why there's an extra word there. Little John and Will Scarlet are part of Robin's merry crew, meaning at the time an outlaw's gang. But Maid Marian, Friar Tuck, and Alan a Dale would not enter the legend until later, possibly as part of the May Day rituals.
Hmm.
One well known story about Robin Hood, which I didn't know about, so how well known is it? Is about him and Little John having a friendly archery contest. Both men were skilled at archery, and from the roof of the monastery, they both shot an arrow. The arrows fell at Whitby Laths, and afterwards, the fields where the arrows landed were known as Robin Hood's Close and Little John's Close. All versions of the Robin Hood story give the same account of his death. He grew old and ill. He went with Little John to Kirkley's Priory near Huddersfield to be treated by his aunt. However, someone persuaded his aunt to murder him, and she slowly bled
Oh,
Robin to death.
that's sad.
With what strength he had left, he blew his horn, and Little John came to his aid, but was too late. Little
Oh.
John placed Robin's bow in his hand and carried him to a window. Robin managed to fire one arrow. Robin then asked Little John to bury him where the arrow landed, which he did. A mound in Kirkley's Park, within bowshot of the house, can still be seen, and it is said to be his last resting place. Little John's grave can be seen in Hathersage Churchyard in Derbyshire. There has been a fascinating comparison made between Robin Hood and William Wallace, a
Oh,
Scottish knight who fought against British oppression in the 13th and 14th centuries,
okay.
which I didn't know about, but my husband knew about it, and he's always said how they were always compared. So,
I didn't know he was compared to that either.
yeah. So, the reason for this is because William Wallace's seal was observed on letters he penned, which featured a long bow. He also hid
Oh,
out in Selkirk Forest like Robin, and his wife's name was Mirren, Scottish for Marion.
okay.
It was pointed out, however, that they had different motivations for their rebellious acts. Wallace was a political hero whose violence was motivated by an abstract ideal. The hallmark of Robin Hood stories is not organized, but disorganized crime. Violent,
Right.
yeah, so very different in their approaches.
Yeah.
Violence is not instrumental, intended to achieve some cause, but spontaneous, spectacular, and self contained. Like King Arthur, he was placed in so many different regions and time eras that it is hard to believe that he was one person, and it seemed to be an idea of many individuals living throughout the time. So, kind of just like King Arthur, he was manifested.
Yeah.
What we do know is that he was a rebel who lived outside of society and fought oppression and injustice, which would have been very appealing to anyone during those times.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it makes, again, like with King Arthur, it makes sense that this person was created given the times and the difficulty of them.
Yeah, so that is my Robin Hood story. Again, I have some articles that I used. I used History Extra, history.com a couple times. One of the articles was by Jenny Cohen, and then historicuk.com, and the author was Ben Johnson.
Nice.
So,
All right, before I forget, my references were, surprisingly enough, the Oprah magazine.
oh,
They had a
nice.
really great article. Caitlin Dewey from the Washington Post, Kelly Robinson from ABC News, and Ali Wang and Sean Dooley, again from ABC News.
Cool.
Yeah.
Woohoo. So those are our stories.
Yay!
Woo-hoo.
So next episode is going to be our big 10th episode, 10.
Woohoo.
So excited. So it doesn't seem like a lot, like 10, like that's a small number, but that means that we've been doing it for over 2 months
Which
now.
is so fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, especially like during these times, it's just like it's nice to have something to look forward to every week.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Especially when not much is going on.
Yeah. So we just want to thank all of our listeners.
Yeah.
We're not big and mighty yet, but it's still nice having the few we do have. We really appreciate it. So
For sure.
we appreciate all of you.
Yeah.
Did you want me to do the social or do you want to?
You can do it this time.
Okay. So we have an email address. It's histories and mysteries 515 all spelled out at gmail.com. You can send any of your suggestions, comments, recommendations to us. If you have any stories of your own, please send them to us. And if we get enough, we'll do a listeners episode. It can be
Yeah.
anything, a spooky ghost story, a true crime story, some fun family history, anything. We're open to everything.
Yeah. If you're related to someone cool from the past, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we also have a Facebook page. It's Histories ampersand Mysteries. And Instagram, it's Histories and Mysteries all spelled out because Instagram does not like symbols.
Symbols.
So,
Yay.
but thank you for listening. We hope you all enjoyed it, and we look forward to bringing you our 2 crazy stories next week.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Bye.